It's been a bit since the found footage genre has had a decent entry. I mean, they used to be pretty prevalent, but not so much anymore. That's why when I heard about the Taiwanese found footage horror Incantation, I wanted to check it out. Well, I did. But should you? A paranormal ghostbusting team aims to break myths of superstitions and share them on their blog. One day, an urgent notice arrived from one of the team's homes, calling him to return for an ancient cult ritual that occurs once every 2 decades in his family. Thinking it would be decent material for their blog, they then experienced the most horrific ancient curse imaginable. This is loosely based on a Taiwanese true story involving a family of cult worshippers. Now, the story follows a young woman named Li Ronan, and we first meet her as she's recording a video for us. She's going to tell us about a curse that she encountered 6 years prior, and then we'll get to see how it all began and then how it plays out. The found footage aspect is really effective, especially because it's consistent in never using any type of view that's from a production camera. I mean, we get security footage, dash cam imagery, plus a ton of handheld video camera content, as Ronan basically has the camera with her at all times. Now, at the heart of this story is the theme of family. Not only does the curse have to do with a family of cult worshippers, but Ronan is a single mom who is just beginning to regain a relationship with her very young daughter named Dodo. Both the familial aspect and the fact that Dodo is very young do have a massive impact on the tone and then ultimately the freakiness of the story. A family is typically a place where a person is safe. Now, I do know that there are huge exceptions, but generally, you don't have to expect a cultish family worshiping an evil deity, unless maybe, of course, you're in the Manson family. But with Dodo being young, this adds another disturbing angle because it's pretty dark and twisted if anything could be allowed to harm the child. I love how the found footage allows for some very intense moments of quiet. I don't know if you ever saw The Invisible Man from just a few years back, but there were points where the camera would just lock down and then you would sit on like a corner of a room and then be there for many, many seconds. Now, I was straining to see if I could see anything or if maybe anything was even actually there. Incantation captures that exact feeling as a camera could be left on something or maybe even dropped to the floor and we just get to see some random angle or view of something way off in the distance. And more often than not, these scenes were also in darker areas, so everything is obscured by shadows. My eyes were hooked to the screen at all these times, intently focused on seeing whatever it is that I'm supposed to see that's now lurking in the dark. Sometimes there were subtle things, other times there weren't, and that's what made it even more intense. The footage also allows for some very up-close shots, meaning that a camera is in somebody's hand as they maybe shut a door or flick a light switch. Now, these are very good at creating an almost claustrophobic feeling because we have just this super narrow field of vision. And when that happens, I always expect something just gnarly to pop out of the shadows. Luckily, there aren't many jump scares in this. I can remember maybe 1 or 2, but a lot of the time, what made me jump were just quick actions as I was focused on a subject. Now, the story is a tiny bit hard to follow in spots because of how the footage is pieced together. Now, we start in a sort of present, and then go back a bunch of years, and then come back to the present-ish. Now, there are title cards that identify time jumps, but I struggled slightly just once or twice to really figure out where we were in the order of things. The mythology is very intriguing, and then it's frightening. There's a lot of chanting and odd looks that come from cult members, and then there are some extremely creepy actions that they perform that just, they're not right. The story does a wonderful job from the very beginning of just creating an atmosphere that is disturbing and eerie. And the special effects are sparing, but when they're employed, they're convincing and they're messed up too. There's an anxiety that slowly builds because we've been told from the very beginning of the movie that there's a curse. So, we just watch the uncomfortable and sometimes even vague information play out in just anticipation of something bad. The imagery is also pretty gnarly at times, with moments that are visceral and even grotesque. I love that the film is also not afraid to go into a fairly dark story territory, even involving Dodo. We can feel some real urgency and apprehension when it comes to her well-being. The movie's an hour and 50 minutes, and there are some spots where we can feel the time, but the elements, they do work together to build and build to just this huge climax. I never felt like there was really a sequence that was unnecessary because the scenes are either establishing more of the relationship between Ronan and Dodo, or they're showcasing Ronan's attempt to just rid them of the curse. The acting is spectacular, especially from Su An-yen Tsai, who plays Ronan. Now, she carries the film as she is our main storyteller, playing a character that has to encompass love, terror, some devastation, concern, fun, and even confusion. mean, she's very sympathetic and believable, which makes her captivating to take in. Now, I think one of the best angles of this story is how we as the audience are addressed and then brought into the story from the very beginning. Now, because we've watched this movie, we're now part of the story. And it's a bit like The Ring, where we watch the videotape and very soon something terrible is going to happen. So overall, Incantation is an effective and creepy horror that uses the found footage angle to create a story that is both engaging and thrilling. The acting is wonderful, creating a dynamic between Ronan and Dodo that is sincere and touching, but also anxiety-ridden. The storytelling does feel a bit long in spots, but all of the pieces work together to create a tale that gave me chills. The editing is executed well for the majority, with only very small parts that had me a bit confused on the timeline. There's no sex, maybe some very brief nudity, some profanity, and then some terrible violence. I give Incantation 4 out of 5 couches. So it's been a bit since I've seen a found footage that intrigued me like this. I hope that you have fun with it. What's a found footage story that you really enjoy? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.